Thursday. Tonight, we're still with Melissa Agee, the doctor, the idiot child abuse pediatrician. Anyway, it's going to be Volume 1, Part 10. And I think we're doing, Sam Park did the examination, I think, on the rest of this depot. So we're going to be seeing and meeting Sam. So it'll be a little bit different, perhaps a little bit quicker tempo. That's what I'm hoping anyway. Notes from James, PayPal link. He lives for your donations, and PayPal's the best way to do it. So there's the link. Hey, John. Anyway, what else do we have? Yeah, if you have any questions or comments as you're going through tonight's video, actually post your comments on the video. But if you have questions, you can email them into capsandstemslaw@gmail.com. That's capsandstemslaw@gmail.com. And we'll try to respond to those during the lives during the week. For Patreon subscribers, or if you're not a Patreon subscriber, actually, if you're litigating one of these cases or you're pro se, wanting to learn how to do it or get some templates, or you're an attorney just looking to get into the line of work and see what we're doing there, we post a lot of work product on Patreon, so go check that out. I've just posted the link. Remember, Patreon subscribers, you get another advantage. Any questions that you may have, if you post them in the messages tab in Patreon, I get an email notification, and then I go right to it, look at it. If it's something I can respond to, I will, and do it fairly quickly. So just keep that in mind. Hey, guys. Everybody's showing up. Nice. Looks like our regular crowd. Wonderful. Anyway, Melissa Agee, Volume 1, Part 10. Tonight's video is going to be about 30 minutes long, and I will try to insinuate myself in where appropriate to answer what I believe are questions, or whatever questions you guys pose in the chat, or just pointers as we come across them. So anyway, let's get going on that. Good night, Evan. See you tomorrow, man. Let's get going on that and get this no. Think Missa, I do not.
Well, you didn't give him any of the emergency care that we just talked about, including an NG tube, right?
I did not.
You didn't make those recommendations either, did you?
No.
Samus, can we take a quick break?
Sure.
Okay, we are now off the record at 3:53. We are now on the record at 3:59.
I want to return to this concept of environmental failure to thrive for a second. Does the term environmental failure to thrive imply that the child is failing to thrive solely due to environmental causes?
Causes outside his body.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. That means that there's nothing organic, meaning to do with his body, that may have contributed to the failure to thrive, right?
Correct.
Okay. And on November 3rd, 2009, that was the diagnosis of environmental failure to thrive was what you rendered for RD, right?
Yes.
Okay. What were the factors that you considered in arriving at that diagnosis?
I utilized records that were brought in to me that day that led up to this date.
So you did review medical records?
Yes.
On November 3rd? Okay, what medical records did you review?
I don't recall exactly what medical records I reviewed.
Who brought the medical records?
I don't recall who did.
Okay. Do you know whether Harbor UCLA requested medical records of the minor from the medical care providers?
Objection, speculation, beg and please.
Of RD?
I don't recall who requested them.
How much time did you spend reviewing the medical records for RD?
I don't recall.
Did you prepare this JVCT 00390 record after the parents left? Or did you do it on the fly?
I'm usually not writing when I'm in front of the parents, so I may have done it after the parents left.
And today, sitting here today, you can't recall who left first, right?
I cannot recall who left first.
Okay. The contact information for Ryan Mills that we see on the lower left-hand corner of the document, was that provided to you verbally, or was there a document that was handed to you?
I don't recall.
So for the failure to thrive due to environmental causes, the diagnosis that you rendered for RD, was that solely based on the medical records that you reviewed on November 3rd?
I don't recall all the records that I had at my hand that day.
Okay. What would you need to see typically in the medical records to make that determination?
Typically, I would request all clinic visits from the time of birth until that day.
Understood. And then what do you need to see in those records that would lead you to believe that there are no organic causes of the failure to thrive?
Well, part of it also is the diet history, and the other parts would be these plots that we have accumulated from birth to follow his growth and over the months.
Any diagnostic tests that you would also rely on?
No.
Why not?
In most cases of environmental failure to thrive, there are no tests required.
No tests as in, we're talking about, well, I mean, I said, I guess it's a little bit vague. When we're talking about tests, for example, you would not take into account any metabolic tests?
I would take into account a newborn screen, for example. That's done on all newborns.
So the diagnosis of failure to thrive due to environmental causes, that's not some sort of a rule-out diagnosis, right?
Objection, vague and ambiguous.
What does that mean?
Well, do you arrive at that diagnosis by ruling out other potential causes?
Through testing?
Sure, through testing.
No.
Okay. Was there anything other than the medical records? Okay, hold on a second. So in order to arrive at this diagnosis of environmental failure to thrive, you said you looked at the medical records, right?
Yes.
You performed a psychosocial, well, you began the psychosocial assessment for the mom, right?
Yes.
And the dad?
Yes.
And you plotted out the growth charts for the child,
Yes.
right? You performed a physical examination of the child.
Yes.
Okay. Did you uncover anything interesting in that physical examination for RD?
Objection, vague and ambiguous.
Anything notable?
Yes.
Objection.
Okay. What was notable to you?
Well, what I noted in the clinic note was that he was delayed in his tooth eruptions, and that he was weak for his age.
Okay. How long after the parents left did you prepare this diagnosis?
I don't recall.
Now you mentioned that earlier that Olga de Jesus also performed a psychosocial assessment of the parents, right?
Of the mother.
Of the mother?
Yes.
Okay, when did she do that?
That day.
Was it before your visit or after your visit?
I believe it was during the visit.
So Olga was in the same room as you and the parents?
No, just at the same time. Same, different room, same time.
Okay, so at some point you had the parents and the child have been separated?
The mom was separated from the dad and the child.
Okay. Why don't we just do this? But why don't we go through the visit, and to the best of your recollection, can you give me a play-by-play of what happened that day?
Objection calls for narrative.
I don't recall the detailed steps of everything that happened at that clinic visit.
Okay, but you do recall that at some point the mother was separated from the father and the child, right?
Yes,
For how long?
I don't recall.
Can you provide an estimate? Was it more than an hour?
I don't recall.
Typically, how long does it take a person to perform a psychosocial assessment?
Typically 30 to 60 minutes.
Okay. Was there any reason why Olga de Jesus did not perform a psychosocial assessment of Ryan Mills?
Because I was.
Oh, okay. So you completed a complete psychosocial assessment for the father, right?
As I am accustomed to doing.
And Olga did you began the psychosocial assessment for Miss Duval, and Olga completed it, correct?
Yes.
Where are the notes from your psychosocial assessment of the father?
They're here.
And it's all notated on this page?
Everything that I got.
Okay. Is there typically a checklist that you follow when you perform this assessment?
No.
Okay. What are the questions you might ask in order to perform an assessment?
Objection, speculation, incomplete hypothetical.
I ask broad, open-ended questions like, what brought you here?
Okay.
That usually starts the psychosocial assessment.
Do you know whether Olga de Jesus reduced her psychosocial assessment to writing as well?
I don't know.
Did you review anything from Olga de Jesus before you rendered the diagnosis of failure to thrive due to environmental causes?
Yes,
You did?
I did.
Okay. What do you recall reading there?
Well, we had a conversation.
Oh, so it was a conversation.
Yes.
What did you guys discuss?
We discussed, from what I can recall, we discussed the mom's report of the pregnancy, how she got pregnant, how she knew Mr. Mills.
And what are the specific details that you recall about that?
From what I can recall, Ms. Duval reported to Olga that she had told Mr. Mills that she couldn't get pregnant, and then later reported to him that she was pregnant after one encounter.
One encounter?
That's what I recall.
She couldn't become pregnant. Why?
I don't know.
Okay. It had nothing to do with birth control, or was it something else?
Objection, speculation.
Do
I
you
don't recall,
Okay. But that she did become pregnant, right?
but that she did become pregnant.
Okay. Anything else regarding how RD was conceived?
Not that I recall.
What else did Olga tell you?
I don't recall the specifics.
Okay. At the time that you prepared this diagnosis, did you have an opinion one way or the other regarding whether the mom was more culpable or completely culpable for the child's condition, or that the dad was more culpable or solely culpable for causing the child's condition?
I don't know that I assign culpability, but I did find that the mom was much more resistant to recommendations on dietary modification, and the dad was much more willing to comply with any recommendations we had to get his son's weight up.
How did you arrive at that conclusion?
That was partially through record review and through the dietitian's history.
And so you did have the dietitian's history?
Yes.
You didn't talk to Wendy Crump, though, did you?
No, our dietitian.
Your dietitian?
Yeah.
What's the name of your dietitian?
Danielle. I provided it today. Danielle Toulier.
Julia. Can you point me to specifically where you gathered that conclusion in the documents?
Well, some of it is from documents that are not in front of me today.
Okay. Well,
such
I guess
as
one of
primary care.
the things I'm curious about is what recommendation was made to Miss Duval that she refused to follow?
Some of that can be obtained through records prior to the Failure to Thrive clinics, and I can take a moment to read through
Sure, if you
Danielle's
would.
note. I do remember the mom had some requirements that the baby get a lot of water.
A lot of water? What do you mean by a lot?
Like any. The baby did not need any bottles of water, and all of that liquid should be converted to nutritious liquid. And
Wait,
she
it
had
was your opinion that the child should not be drinking water?
the child should not be drinking bottles of water when he's this underweight.
Okay. Did she have a bottle of water with her that day?
I don't recall.
Did you observe the mom or the dad feeding the child on November 3rd, 2009?
I don't recall.
Is that typically something that you might do in order to perform an assessment of a child suffering from failure to thrive?
We would.
Okay. And had you performed something like that, it would be noted in the records, right?
It should be noted in the records. But actually, that's what the home visit is for as well.
Do you recall how much time this family spent with you on November 3rd? Sorry, at the Failure to Thrive clinic on November 3rd, 2009?
I don't recall.
Okay. Now, you've seen a lot of children at this point, it's fair to say, that had suffered from failure to thrive, right?
Yes.
And you've provided treatment to a lot of children suffering from failure to thrive, right?
Yes.
In your experience, what has been the success rate for helping children that are failing to thrive?
I don't know the success rate.
How would you define success in treating a failure to thrive patient?
BMI returning to normal.
Okay. Did RD's BMI return to normal while under the care of failure to thrive?
I don't think his BMI returned to normal within the months he was seen by Failure to Thrive clinic.
How do we determine what's a normal BMI for a child like RD?
Well, like I discussed the calculation, and then we would plot it. I don't have the BMI plot right here, but it should be greater than 14.
Just talking about the cases where you have diagnosed environmental failure to thrive for patients that you've personally seen and that you've treated, What percent of them did return to normal BMI?
I don't know the percent.
Okay, was it a lot?
Yes.
Typically, how does that happen? Is it a gradual change, or does it happen quickly?
It depends on the circumstances.
Okay. Now, if a child if a parent, sorry, let's start over. If a parent has been willfully failing to feed a child, and that leads to environmental failure to thrive, and you provide treatment by providing food to the child, typically does the child consume the food? Does the child have an appetite?
Objection, compound, vague and ambiguous.
It depends on the circumstances.
Okay. But in the cases that you've seen, is it typical for you to see a child with a voracious appetite if provided food that was withheld?
Objection, speculation, incomplete hypothetical.
It depends on the circumstance, really.
In the cases for comparable children, I'm talking about in terms of age to RD, and you did see a return to normal BMI, how quickly does the child experience that catch-up weight?
Objection, incomplete hypothetical, speculation.
Are you talking about RD's case or
No, I'm talking about
case?
other cases that you've personally handled.
Well, each case is unique. I can't speak in that kind of generality.
Sure. What is the fastest recovery that you've seen? And you can give me an estimate. I don't need something.
Months.
Months. Okay. In treating a child that has environmental failure to thrive, and you've assisted parents in helping them to feed their child, correct?
Yes.
Okay. How long does it typically take for you to notice significant improvement based on the treatment?
Objection, speculation, incomplete hypothetical.
It really depends on the caregiver.
Depends on the caregiver. Okay. How much time do you think would be fair to provide a parent to try and try new methods for feeding a child in order to see whether there is a noticeable improvement?
Objection, vague and ambiguous as the term fair. Speculation, incomplete hypothetical.
Each case is unique, so
Well,
I would give them as much time as, I would give them the time they needed.
would a day be sufficient? Would one day be sufficient in order for a parent to follow your advice and for you to measure whether there is some sort of noticeable gain?
Objection, speculation, incomplete hypothetical, vague and ambiguous.
Again, it depends on the situation, but a day sounds
But
pretty-
under certain circumstances, then a day would be sufficient.
Possibly.
Okay. Explain to me how you would arrive at that conclusion.
Objection, speculation, incomplete hypothetical.
Are you going to give me more details to that?
Well, I mean, isn't it true that one of the measurements you would take in order to measure improvement of a child in terms of following your treatment would be to see a return to normal BMI,
Yes.
right? And it takes time for a child to return to a normal BMI, right?
Yes.
Okay. And if we were to plot that on these growth charts, we should see an upward trajectory, right? In a
It-
return to BMI?
Yes.
Okay. And it would take time, it would take certainly more than a day for us to see a noticeable change in the child's BMI, right?
Yes.
Okay. What do you think would be the minimum amount of time for us to see that upward trajectory?
Objection, speculation, incomplete hypothetical, vague and ambiguous.
It probably depends on how chronically malnourished the child is.
Okay. During your time at the Failure to Thrive clinic, did you see any patients where the parents voluntarily brought their children to your clinic?
Objection, vague and ambiguous.
I'm talking about not without a referral.
Objection, vague and ambiguous.
I don't know that a child would find their way to our clinic without a referral.
based on your experience, did the Failure to Thrive clinic accept patients? You know, let's say a person found out about your clinic through Google, and they called you up. Did the Failure to Thrive accept such patients during the time you were there?
We would.
You would. Okay. And based on your recollection, have you ever seen a patient like that?
I don't recall.
Were there any instances where you offered treatment to a patient without a referral to DCFS at
Yeah.
the Failure to Thrive clinic?
Yes.
Okay. And so there were instances then where you would help a parent learn how to properly feed their child, for example, so that they can help care for their child, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And if you did see significant improvement under those circumstances, you would not file a report with DCFS, right?
Correct.
Okay. Did you make any recommendations to Ms. Duvall on November 3rd, 2009 along that vein?
I don't recall.
Do you recall if you made any recommendations to Mr. Mills?
Actually, it would be our nutritionist, Danielle, who would make the dietary recommendations.
But sitting here today, you don't know then whether there were recommendations made by the dietitian.
Well, they're here.
They are
in the-
here.
in the
Okay, can you
report.
point me to that?
JVCT 1301.
Okay.
It would be under nutrition intervention. So there are recommendations for dad and mom.
Okay. So I see that, for example, the dietitian recommended that mom feed foods first at meals with liquids offered after or between. Suggested she replace his water bottle with a milk bottle, paren, or breast milk in paren, explaining that patient receives a lot of water and fluid from the fruits and vegetables he eats in his breast milk, and he could potentially receive at least an additional 120 kcals per day. Recommended not force feeding, i.e. observing his cues and waiting for him to finish bites before giving him another one. Encourage mom to offer one new food. And maybe it continues, but it looks like it's cut off. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
Okay. Do you recall whether Ms. Duvall had an opportunity to follow this advice following her visit?
From my recollection, this advice had already been given to her on numerous occasions.
But it was also given to her on November 3rd, 2009, right?
Yes.
By Danielle Tullier?
Yes.
Okay. And after Ms. Duvall was provided this recommendation by Danielle, she didn't actually have an opportunity to follow this advice, did she?
Objection, speculation.
I don't know.
Okay. As of November 3rd, 2009, did you consider RD to be a special needs child?
Yes.
You did?
Yes.
Why did you consider him to be a special needs child?
He was developmentally delayed, and he was failure to thrive.
Okay. Did you arrive at the conclusion as of November 3rd, 2009, that RD was depressed?
I did not note that in my assessment.
I understand you didn't note it in the assessment, but did you have that understanding or that conclusion as of November 3rd, 2009?
Not that I recall.
Okay. There are some terms that are probably medical terms that I'm struggling with. I was hoping you might be able to explain them to me. What is gaze avoidance?
Gaze avoidance means avoids eye contact.
Okay. And how about apathy?
Apathy is not really a term I would use to describe a toddler, but it means indifference.
Okay. How about listlessness? How might you observe listlessness in a
Low
minor?
energy. Sorry.
And self-stimulating play?
That's broad.
Okay. Did you note any self-stimulating play on the part of RD on November 3rd, 2009?
I did not.
How about during any duration of time in which you treated RD?
I don't recall.
Okay. What's rigidity?
Stiffness?
Okay. Did you observe any rigidity in RD on November 3rd, 2009?
No.
How about during the duration of time that you treated RD?
That might be found in the occupational or physical therapy notes.
Okay.
I did not note that.
How about back arching?
I don't think I have any report of that.
Okay. Why might back arching be significant in a child that has failure to thrive, if at all?
It's pretty non-specific, actually.
It is nonspecific. Okay. Is that something that would be one factor you might consider in assessing a child with failure to thrive?
Objection, speculation, incomplete hypothetical.
Is
You
it?
want me to answer
Would it?
that?
Yeah, sure.
If that symptom were accompanied with other symptoms,
Okay.
I would consider it.
Okay, what's hypertonicity and what's hypotonicity?
Hypertonicity is stiffness, and hypotonicity is weakness.
Okay.
Well, there we have it. Melissa Agee. Not a lot to comment on there. We do have a question from Caps and Stems. It's from Sally Borghesi. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And it looks like a long one, so I'm just going to read it and then see if I can discern a question from it. And then we'll go from there. Remember, you guys, when you send questions, try to make them actual like questions, not long factual prefatory statements. That makes it tough to sort of decipher. But anyway, here's the question. Is the proper place to go to get subject matter jurisdiction voided the Michigan Court of Appeals? Okay, let me reread this. Is the proper place to go to get subject matter jurisdiction voided the Michigan Court of Appeals? That's a direct legal advice type question. What I would tell you is if in the juvenile or family court you had an adverse ruling, your proper recourse typically is going to be to file a notice of appeal and pursue your appellate remedies. So, for example, if you believe that the court lacked subject matter jurisdiction, but the trial court took jurisdiction anyway and did what they did, and it was against your interests, then yes, I would say the next step would be to appeal that judgment. And that would obviously be whatever state you're in, the appropriate court of appeals. So that's the way I would answer that question. Here's the factual statement related to it. Child was in relative care from birth for over 5 years. Statute says that if a relative has care of the child by parent permission, then the state has no interest. Much case law here in Michigan on reversals for this very reason. Our case is old, but I've found that it does not matter. The court stole the child. I was just too stupid when the case was going to even know about SMJ I'm assuming that's summary judgment, and it was never discussed in court. Previously have tried the circuit court and court of claims, both said wrong court. Now trying leave to appeal in the Court of Appeals, so is this the right place? As a grandparent, the circuit court said I have no standing. But how could that be if I had the child? Maybe I must be stupid again. No, I don't think you are stupid. In fact, it can get pretty complex. I don't know that this far down the road, 5 years. I mean, I don't know when this happened. It's not clear. But if you're within the statute of limitations, at least under 42 U.S.C. Section 1983, there is a line of cases that would suggest that grandparents may have standing to sue for violation of their 14th Amendment familial association rights, so long as they had a prior long-standing custodial relationship with the child. Here, I can't really tell, but from what you stated, but it sounds like you had custody of the child with the permission of the parent for about 5 years. That would qualify as a long-standing custodial relationship, which would give you standing to pursue a constitutional claim, but that's not going to get your child back or the child back. So I don't know if that really helps you. But anyway, there is a line of cases out there that would suggest that you could have standing in a federal civil rights lawsuit, but not necessarily as a grandparent trying to get custody in the family court, if that makes sense. Next question is the innocent one. Not sure who that is, but anyway, I need the case citation where the 4th DCA, that's District Court of Appeals, ruled that truthful, honest, accurate, and complete was stated and required. Yeah, that's a recent case. That was Casey N versus, I think, County of Orange. Yeah, I think that's it. CASEY. That's the first name, and then N is the initial for the last name, and then versus County of Orange. And yeah, that actually originally started out as my case, but then I got conflicted out. A lady from Texas named Rebecca Phillips came in and tried the case, did a great job on it, got $1 million verdict and another couple $1 million in attorney's fees. Then the county, of course, stupidly appealed, and then they got their asses handed to them like a chewed up old hat. And the Court of Appeals actually published the decision, and right in the very preface of their published decision, they say the reason we're publishing it is because these people are shitheads and they need to be instructed over and over again to be truthful, honest, accurate, and complete in the reporting because the courts are relying on it. So, I paraphrased a little bit, but that's basically what they said. I got conflicted because it turned out that the dad, years prior, had sought representation on the other side of that fight, and I had declined it, but I had completely forgotten about it when I got, Casey reached out to me and her prior attorneys reached out to me, and I accepted the representation, got ass deep in it. Dad's attorney found out, and then Dad and his attorney got all over me and said, hey, we're going to raise the conflict and you got to get the fuck out. So they were right. So I did. But anyway, my bad. That's the short story. There's a lot more to it, but that's all I'm going to talk about here. Yeah, no shit. Anyway, let's see. Do we have any other questions? I think that's it. Yeah, there's no Patreon questions. I think that's it for tonight. So anyway, thank you all for attending tonight's stream. Tomorrow will be, Aggie again, Volume 1, Part 11. Remember, as always, if you have questions that didn't get answered tonight in the chat or anywhere else, please do email them to capsandstemslaw@gmail.com. That's capsandstemslaw@gmail.com. And we'll try to respond to those during the lives during the week. With respect to Patreon, again, remember your questions get answered ASAP, and you can submit those questions using the Messages tab in Patreon. Just a reminder, if you look right below the video, there's a video description. If you click or tap show more, there's tons of links to catch up on or review past videos, as well as the Patreon link. It's important that you guys, if you are enjoying the content or find it to be useful, it's important that you show your support and your love by liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. Those are all statistics that matter. And James actually tracks that stuff. It keeps him motivated. If you want to keep him working on this stuff, you got to keep him motivated. Anyway, in the end, we hope that the content we're generating and providing here helps you guys in some way navigate through whatever it is that you're doing, whether it's self-litigation, you're an attorney litigating, or you're just a parent going through this, fucked up process in the juvenile dependency court. Whatever we can do to help, that's the whole point. Anyway, with that, I am out of here. I got a bunch of deadlines to meet, a bunch of stuff I got to get done, so I got to get back to it. You guys have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you tomorrow.